Hola.
What's up, dude?
Oh, not much. Living the dream, I guess. I'm at
Yeah.
a hotel pension in La Paz, which is where they say all the bikepackers come on the Baja Divide route guide. So it's this really cool old mission that they turned into kind of like a hostel slash hotel. So yeah, it's
So,
very, very vibrant, lots of colors, lots of plants, and yeah, I'm in like this little open air communal place, which is really cool.
yeah. So it's become a hot spot on the Baja Divide.
Yeah, I would imagine. I don't know. I'm trying to think like figure out how many riders actually do this route a year. Because there's been places we've stopped where they've said they've seen multiple riders, and then there's other places I've stopped where they haven't seen anybody. So I would be curious to know like how many people do the actual route versus starting where I'm at now, where the Cape Flute starts, because that's a little bit more accessible. I don't know. I don't know how many people do it all at once because it seems like a lot of people that I've met actually um, do it in segments. So like they'll come out over the course of 4 years and just break it down into segments so that they're not doing it all at once because it does take a while to do. I think I'm on week 7.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, I've been slowly taking my time. I've been learning how to tour.
Learning how to tour. How
Yeah.
long is the Baja Divide? I don't remember. I feel like it was like 1,200 miles or something. I'm
It's around 1700.
1,700. Okay.
Yeah. I think I'll be a little bit over 1800 and some change just because of some reroutes and some other extracurricular activities I added. So it's a good chunk. When I think about that number, it's surprising because you go to the Baja Peninsula, it's not that big, but you keep going back and forth from like the from coastline to the Sea of Cortez through the mountains, and then you zigzag down the course. And I think Alaska I pedaled 2,000 miles, and Canada was almost 2,000 miles as well. So to kind of put that chunk into perspective, it's really interesting that you can get that much mileage on a little peninsula like the Baja Peninsula.
Yeah. Yeah, you really wouldn't think so. And it's La
Yeah,
Paz, not La Paz, huh? I've been saying it wrong all this time.
I am probably saying it wrong. Uh, I've been saying a lot of things wrong. Mi español es no bueno, es caput. That's like number one on my list for 2025 is learning Spanish.
Yeah, yeah, that's a top a big priority for me too. It's or a big goal of mine is to learn Spanish. I've been dabbling at it, but a funny story. Today's actually my birthday, so I can think of no better birthday present than to chat with my old friend Indy, dude. Um,
Dude, happy birthday.
Thank you, my friend, mi amigo.
Yeah.
Uh, I
Feliz
got a
cumpleaños.
My girlfriend's family got me a funny shirt that it's the Nintendo logo, but it says no
Mhm.
entiendo, which means for people who don't know, I don't understand. And they gave me crap because they're kind of making fun of me because Natalie and I were in like a armed mugging situation in El Salvador, and the guy
Whoa.
was speaking to me in English, but I didn't. You know, when you're in Latin America, and I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but like you're expecting people to speak Spanish, and so when they speak English, it takes a little while to process. This has happened to Natalie and I quite a bit, where it's like they're like, "Oh, they were speaking English," you know, and it like just takes your brain a second to like switch over. Well, this guy was saying, "Give me your money," and in English, he was saying, "Give me your money," and I said to him, "No habla inglés," which means I don't speak English. For anybody that doesn't know, which because I was nervous and anyway, so they got me a funny shirt, well, kind of funny that says no entiendo. I don't understand.
I think that's wonderful. What happened with that situation?
Well, we were just we were shopping in like a little gift shop in kind of a touristy destination in El Salvador. It's called Ruta de Flores, so it's a series of like 5 towns, and you just drive to different towns and check out, the different cultural aspects of each town. And we were in one of these shops. We had just gotten in there. I had my GoPro on, so I filmed the incident. I have it on camera because I was trying to do like a travel video for us. And yeah, so we're standing there and the guy like walks in the door behind Natalie. So I can see him, but she can't see him. And he's closer to her than to me, and he's waving a gun around kind of like this, not saying anything, but he was an older man and he was obviously like drunk, and it was a really weird situation. And I don't recommend doing this in general. Natalie and I have had conversations like, if anyone's ever like, hey, give me your money, you just give them whatever they're asking for and you move on. But because of the way he was acting and he wasn't really making his intentions clear, I actually engaged with him and I walked up to him, but I did it like kind of calm. I was like, hola, amigo. I was kind of just like trying to not escalate the situation, but also getting close enough to him to where I could like grab his wrist, and just, disable the gun situation. And he said to me, give me the money, which we didn't know until we watched the video back. That's what he said. And I said, no habla inglés. And then I kind of laughed. I was like, oh, sorry, I mean, no habla español. And he kind of laughed. And so it kind of like disarmed the situation. And then the shop owner came over and kind of got rid of him. So that was like the whole interaction. But yeah, it was scary. But also, yeah, it was scary and it wasn't cool and it wasn't fun, but it was also fine. The guy, he was just an old drunk guy and he didn't really have a good plan. I don't think. I think he was just walking down the street and he saw us, and I don't know. It was weird. It was definitely weird.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
I'm glad it worked out okay for everyone.
Well, I got a funny shirt out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my advice to people going forward is, if you're ever in that situation, just say no habla inglés, and it'll confuse them. They're like, wait, what? Now I don't know what to do.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm going to put that in my back pocket.
Yeah, put that in your back pocket. When you introduce yourself to people, do you introduce yourself as Indy or Indiana?
I say Indiana because when I and then everybody calls me Indy just kind of after they hear it. But if I introduce myself as Indy, they say Andy. And then I'm like, no, it's Indy with an I. And a lot of the people, especially in Central and South America, they go, Indiana Jones. And I say, right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So they all know the Indiana. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Good. Well, we'll go with Indiana. So if anyone, is listening from Latin America or anywhere, I guess that makes sense. Indiana, is a little bit.
I have exactly a lot of people that are going to be listening from Baja. I just stopped in San Juanico for a week at this guy who runs the warm showers there, Mattia, him and his wife and his family, and that's who I rode with from San Juanico to Mulegé and then past Mulegé after we took the boat across. And I told them I was going to be on here, and they're super stoked to check it out. He has a website called bikepackingbaja.com, which is really cool. So you definitely are going to have some new fans for sure.
Mattia, you said?
His name is Mattia.
Mattia. Mattia.
Yeah,
shout out Mattia.
He's in San Juanico. His place is called Casa Venezia. And him and his wife are from Italy. They actually met traveling in Brazil. And then they had a pizza restaurant in mainland Mexico. It was a little bit too touristy for them. So like they just worked their tails off. And he is a surfer, which brought him to San Juanico originally. They moved there during the pandemic. Everything was really tough. Him and his wife and his 2 kids lived in this little bungalow while they were building the rest of the property. And he is essentially just like living my dream, which like my ultimate goal is to find a piece of property somewhere that cyclists go through and pay it back, have a place where people can stay. I can offer them free lodging and just listen to all these travel stories, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like that's all, you do all these routes and you start to see, I'm sure as you've been bike packing, you notice like there's always some really cool ranch that has been abandoned and it's in like a valley and it's all by itself. And you like want to know the history of it. What's the story of this? And you're like, how do I go about buying this place? You know,
Yeah.
like how many pesos does this cost? So essentially, yeah, he's living my dream doing that, paying it forward. He reached out to me when he read my article on bikepacking.com and said, hey, when you get to Baja Divide, I'm a 15-mile detour from the route. Come visit me. And I've since become really good friends with him, obviously his family as well. And he has a website called bikepackingbaja.com.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. He's written all these articles about these different segments, and he has this part on his website called Baja Proof, which I thought was really kind of funny, but it makes sense. Like his house is about 1,000 miles into the route if you're starting in Tecate or the San Diego airport doing the full route. And by that time, he said most people usually have broken racks, they've got broken wheels, like they're in dire need of repair. So part of his website is testing all of this gear and like saying what works, what doesn't. And it's interesting, he had these little like tail fin mini panniers. I think they're maybe like 5 liters. They go on the racks. They go on a 3 bottle mount rack, 3 bottle mount eyelet, and then they have their own attachment system. But it looks like I kept calling them like Ninja Turtle guards. They look like these little shells.
Right.
And I'm like, Matia, this is kind of ridiculous. And then we get to Mulahay and we were outside of our apartment we were going to stay in. And we go outside and my bike is like full on leaned on his bike, crashed over into it. And my brake lever actually stabbed the shield. And he was like, oh, here we go. And we look at it. And because it hit the shield first, it didn't puncture his tail fin pannier. And I was like, if that isn't like the best like product, placement, like I don't know what is. Like it saved me from having. Obviously I would have bought him a new pannier if I had
Yeah.
punctured his like brand new tail fin pannier. But I just thought it was really kind of funny.
So
But yeah,
yeah,
if you go to his website, he does tours and short tours, and we actually did an alternate from San Juanico to Mulahay, because that section from El Datil to Mulahay has the original route has a lot of sand and some riverbed crossings, and it's totally doable like the rest of the route, but it has some difficult sections. So if you do this detour to San Juanico, not only do you get to visit him and his family and stay in these awesome bungalows, but you get to do a different part of the route, which has some really great resupply options and some like little water as well. So
yeah, I
anyhow.
actually just followed his Instagram whenever I was like, I've been following your journey ever since the beginning, but I saw you were tagging some of his stuff. And so I gave him a follow. So he's just seeing all the haggard bikes and people. Once they get to him, he's like, okay, your bike and setup is Baja proof or it's not Baja proof by that stage.
Yeah, and he is such a wonderful guy. So getting to hear all of his stories of the people that have come through was like really inspiring. He's like, you obviously have a good rig for this. He's like, I see people with 1.5-inch tires, and they're on these old metal, steel frame bikes, and they end up making it. Like they hike a lot of these sections, or they'll take kind of buses and detour through the really rough sections. But I think maybe the most inspiring story he told me was, I think it was in mainland Mexico. Him and his wife met this guy from Japan who was traveling around the world. I want to say for like 12 years. I know it was down in Chile actually, and he had written a very detailed, meticulous account of what he thought his expenses were going to be and where he was going to be at, like down to the meal, down to the plane ticket. And when COVID happened, he was, I don't know, like maybe 500 miles short of completing his journey, and he had to go back to Japan after like a 10-year journey. But he showed me a picture of his bike, and this guy had, like, I kid you not, like a cast iron skillet on the back of his bike. Like it was one of those pictures you see and everything is loaded up on it. So obviously he's probably traveling by some roads, maybe some gravel here and there, but I just thought that was so cool. I'm like, this guy, left his job. He was able to plan all of this and do this route. Obviously, he didn't make it to the finish line, but for him, he was still out there and he did it. I just thought that was really inspiring. And to see a setup like that where like it looks like somebody's house is strapped to their bike.
I mean, if you're living on it, I guess it is your house, huh? It's your house,
Yeah.
it's your car, it's your everything, it's your lifeline.
Yeah. So anyways, shout out to Mattia at Casa Venezia and bikepackingbaja.com. I like literally cried when I got there. He told me everything he was going to do for me and I was just overwhelmed,
Yeah.
It was that beautiful.
I love that. Well, Indy, we're going with Indiana. If my math is correct, this is your fourth time on the podcast. Is that right? Does that sound right to you?
Sure.
I think you were episode 2 and 3 because on 3, you and Tom Hughes both came on, and then you came back after you did the East Texas Showdown yo-yo.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think this is Cuatro.
Cuatro.
Cuatro. I wish I knew how to say episode in Spanish, but
I do not know.
Yeah. So we'll skip some of the normal introductionary questions because I have a lot of other questions for you, to be honest, and encourage listeners to go back in the archives and pull some from the archives if they want to. But before we get into, you're obviously on an epic trip, and that's the main thing that we're going to be talking about today. But you've done some other things that I wanted to touch on before we dove into your cycling trip around the world. And maybe for personal and selfish reasons, I met you at the GranGravel 500 in 2018. I don't think I know it was 2018. You did the GranGravel, I think, several times, and then you came back for the East Texas Showdown, which is in the same area, some of the same roads that the GranGravel 500 took place on. So maybe for selfish reasons, what keeps bringing you back to East Texas to do bike racing or bike riding?
Good question. I think it's the right time of year for anybody who's wants to get out of the cold weather that might be in a different part of the country. I think it really showcases the beauty that Texas has to offer for someone who's not from Texas. I kind of have this vague, if you say, hey, we're going to Texas, I think really hot weather, maybe some cactus, a lot of cattle, and just flat ground. And the terrain is so not like that. It's so diverse. You have pine trees, you've got rain, you've got cool gravel roads. You just have this really interesting dynamic of riding down there. And then on top of all of that, the crowd of people that you pull in is really cool. So you have people, I think when I was there, it was maybe only your second year, there was people coming from all over parts of the country. So you not only get to take a break from maybe some cold weather, you get to meet some really fascinating people. There's people I met there like Hannah Simon, who I ended up doing the Triple Crown with, which was really cool. Todd Nisbet, who runs Concrete Revolt, is a super, super cool guy. Maxwell, who does all the photos for you. And then who's the guy? He got into trail running for a bit. He did the film. I'm trying to think of his name.
Seth Dubois.
Seth, yeah. So you have all these people that you meet over the course of 2 or 3 days, and then here I am, many years later, and I'm still friends with them, engaging with them, on social media and checking in every now and then. So I think you combine all those things, and you just have a really awesome weekend. Why wouldn't you go?
Yeah, why wouldn't you go? A good answer.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that's really kind of surprised me, and I really appreciate about what the East Texas Showdown has become is it's really, I really thought I was just servicing Texas, right? Like I'm like, okay, well, we need to like service all these bike packers that live here and give us some more options here in you know, my home state. But I didn't anticipate how many people would come from all over the United States, and now we have international riders that come every year. This year we have 3 so far that are signed up from Mexico, Canada, and the UK. So people are coming, you know, from all over the world. And I just love how it kind of breaks down some of those stereotypes that we have in our head, and it gets people to just, you know, experience it for themselves. And so far the feedback has been like just overwhelmingly positive, which is really, yeah, it's really encouraging, I think. But I wanted to share with you something that I always use you as an example. And I tell this story all the time whenever I'm talking about breaking down stereotypes and like cross meshing different worlds, essentially, you know, people coming from out of state, out of country. I remember whenever we rode GranGravel together, the story I always tell is like you rode it with a mohawk, a pink tutu, and you've got like tattoos all over. And, you know, we're going out to rural East Texas where, you know, you just got hillbillies and they probably haven't seen a lot of mohawks and pink tutus and whatnot. So what was your experience like? I always tell this story of like this cross-pollinating of cultures. What was your experience like as a guy with tattoos, a mohawk, and a pink tutu riding in East Texas?
Uh, that's a great question. And thinking back on it, I think what it did was it showcased the hospitality of people in Texas, and also, like you said, breaking down some of those stereotypes that you know, there's these maybe people you don't politically align with, and they're not going to be accepting of people from other backgrounds, or maybe who are a little bit eccentric or something like that, say. And I didn't experience that at all, you know. And I remember Billy Rice, when I did the GranGravel, taking a video of me, and he couldn't believe I was going out there and doing it. And same thing with that race. You know, I'm a big fan of like waving to people. And like when you make that eye contact and you smile and you wave, like nobody looks at you and like flicks you off. You know,
Yeah.
like you flip that switch, like you start this conversation before they even get to meet you. So in a way, like that's always been helpful. But the only funny, you know, everybody was super kind. The only funny interaction I had was when I was in, like, I think it was a Dollar General, and there was these 2 young girls there, like maybe, I think they were sisters, maybe 5 or 7. And they were kind of like looking at me and my outfit. And this was after I had been up for over 24 hours. So I'm pretty haggard looking. I have bags under my eyes. And I look, and they're like 10 feet away, and I just kind of give them the wave. And their mom like looks down at them and looks at me. And then she just like scoots a foot in front of them. And I just kind of like put my head down, and I was like, fair enough. Like she did like the natural mama bear thing, but there was
Yeah.
nothing was said. It was just like, all right, dude, I don't know you. And I'm like, fair enough, you know? But other than that, people wave, people honk. I didn't have anything thrown at me. I guess there was one thing that happened, and this was the first year of the GranGravel, and it was like 8 in the morning, and I think it was right before I met you. It was the second year, right before I met you at the finish line. You were there for that. I got coal rolled by a big truck in town, and like I was so tired, like all I could do was laugh, you know. But I
Yeah, it's
might not
almost
have.
an
I don't know if I
initiation
had
in
the tutu that
Texas.
year.
What's
Yeah, I
that?
actually that was the year. That was the year I didn't even have the tutu. So it was
Yeah.
just
That was
somebody
just
who.
being a cyclist.
Yeah, yeah, and it was in town. You know, like I don't know.
Yeah. People are people, man. I was just
Yeah.
yesterday I was driving my girls home from school, and the truck in front of me, there was a guy like fixing his car on the side of the road, and like he just threw a cup out the window at him. I've no, you know, like
Oh
why?
my
Why did you
God.
do that? You know? So uh, anyway,
I think people are frustrated right now.
yeah.
You know. things are weird. It's a weird time in the world, and I feel very fortunate I'm not in America. I've kept away from the news. I've heard a few things here and there that are just kind of unbelievable. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. But yeah, people need to be more kind, and generally speaking, 99.9% of the time, and I'm sure you've and other people listening have experiences. People are kind. So these little
Yeah.
stories that we say those are the exceptions, you know.
100%. And sometimes I think we probably amplify them too much, and we probably need to focus on more of the positive interactions. You know, I mean, I think that's part of the way you combat that is by sharing good stories, positive interactions, and leading with kindness. I really like what you said about, you know, I'm a waver. I'm a big waver and a smile, especially in Texas. I think that's a really good approach for disarming people and just saying, hey, I'm a friend, you know. But,
Yeah.
you know, just as cyclists, I think it's a really good practice to lead with kindness and try to humanize yourself. Like, we're all just people doing our thing, you know? So, like, lead with a wave and a smile, and a little bit of kindness probably goes a long way.
100%.
Yeah. So you are a triple crowner. You're one of this is crazy. I mean, you're one of 23, according to Dot Watchers. You're one of 23 people who've done the Triple Crown Challenge. And I don't know what percentage of those are single speed, but it's obviously a smaller. Oh, wait, you weren't single speed, though. You were on a Pinion.
No. Yeah, I was on the Pinion, the same bike I'm riding now, Solid Cycles OM2P. Shout out to Jeff at Solid Cycles for the Colorado Trail and the Arizona Trail, and then I rode a Lauf Segla 12 speed for the Tour Divide, which is like their gravel bike.
That is, I mean, it's a huge accomplishment to be one of 23 people that have done the Triple Crown Challenge. And I'm wondering, is that something that like you wanted to kind of check that box before you went off on this big tour, or just something that you wanted to see if you could do?
It was a combination of a few things that to do the Triple Crown. My father had actually passed away, and I knew it was going to happen. It was inevitable. Like, I had just this dark depression on me and this huge like gaping hole in my heart, and I didn't know what to do. And I found myself in just a really dark, lonely place. And anyone who has dealt with depression or seasonal affective disorder or anything of that sort of nature knows that the thing with thing that happens is you know you're in it, but you can't get out of it because you're in it.
Yeah.
It's like this death spiral, right? And so I just found myself like working all these hours, and then I would get off work, and then I would just like go home and I would put on Netflix, and the next thing I know, it'd be like 5 a.m. and I would just be like watching Netflix, and I'm like, I don't know how to get out of this. And I talked to friends and everything, and I just kind of went back to what worked before, which was the whole reason I got into bikepacking was after I ran the Leadville Trail Race, did the Leadman Series for my brother in 2016. That's when I got into the American Trail Race in 2017. So I said, what have I done before? And it's essentially creating goals. And you create a goal, and for me, it's all about accountability. And so, you know, I post that shit all over Facebook and Instagram, like, I'm going to do the Triple Crown. And people are like, hell yeah. And so, like, that gets you pumped up. And then slowly but surely, like, got back into the gym, canceled the online video subscriptions, like, no more Netflix, no more Amazon Prime, and just really focus on this goal. And then it was interesting because my life just changed again, like drastically. Maybe I think it was 3 weeks before the Tour Divide, and my house went under contract. And it was just a thing where some clients were relocating. It was we had written 5 offers. The market was still really bonkers at that point in time. So they kept getting their offers rejected, and they were writing amazing offers, but they wanted inspections because they were from out of town. Anywho, long story short, they came out and saw my house. They wanted to buy it. I said, okay, that's perfect. There's all these repairs I want to do for you. I want you guys to have inspections. So I had about 3 weeks to um, get my house sold, do a bunch of repairs myself, and then and get ready for the tour divide, and then also sell 98% of what I owned, because when I got back from the tour divide, I wasn't going to have anywhere to live. And then in the middle of that, my friend Kirk says, "Hey, like, I want you to come out to my family's cabin for my birthday," and he's been inviting me out there for years, and I couldn't say no. And it's a really special place. I'd never been out there before, but it's actually where his parents were traveling to when they were in a car accident and they died suddenly. So it's a place I've always wanted to visit with him. And Kirk and I, that was about 2 years after my brother passed away. So I think that was in about 2018. But I've never been able to share that experience and go up there with my friend Kirk before. And that's actually what brought us together. I think grief and tragedy brought us together because we were always acquaintances in high school. So anyways, we go up to his cabin, and I'm like, okay, we're going to spend a week up there, which like puts me down to 2 weeks to get rid of, do all that stuff that I just told you about. And while we're up there, we end up, it's his 40th birthday. We go get tattooed. We go cold plunging in the Michigan lake. And then we had talked about doing like this heroic dose of psilocybin mushrooms. And I was really scared. Like, I've never done that amount before. It's essentially 5 grams. We're in a safe spot, but I'm really scared. And then I look down at my hand, and the tattoo I had gotten that day is love is greater than fear. So it's love and the greater sign fear, to remind myself, like, there's nothing to be afraid of. Like, you approach everything with love. Like, where are daily decisions coming from? Are they from a place of love, or are they from a place of fear? And so, like, I looked at him and I was like, okay, I'm ready. And like, I set my intent with, I wanted to like dissolve my ego for these races. Because having good results in the past, I just wanted to go out there, and I really just wanted to have fun. So I didn't really want to race per se. I just wanted to like go out there and meet people and do the thing. So that was my intent. And then we like sat down in this beautiful location. We had blankets on, we had eye covers on, and we spent this 5 hours on this magical journey together. And essentially what happened was that the I felt like the house was shaking as dogs started to growl, and like, obviously there was a presence there. It's hard to explain, but like, someone was there. And all of a sudden I start crying uncontrollably, and it's like tears of grief. And I'm feeling the loss of my brother. I'm feeling the loss of my father. And it's the souls of my father and my brother. And my father's just like smiling. He's like super stoked. My brother's like very stoic. And like, they look at me and they're like, you have to let it go. You have to let the grief go. It is tearing you up. And at that moment, I could feel physically, it felt like there was a rake going across like my heart center on my chest. And it was very profound. And my tears turned to joy. And it was just this, without any doubt in my entire mind, I just knew that they were okay. Wherever they were totally fine. And I had to just let this grief go. And then further on, 2 hours later, the same thing happened. And it was actually, the next time, it was Kirk's parents. And so like, I'm crying again, and I'm telling them like, thank you for your beautiful son. Thank you for this beautiful place. Like, we love you guys. We miss you, but we know you're okay. So going into this Triple Crown, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. Because now I didn't have a reason to race. Like, I was going to race to like get rid of this grief. And now that I've had this like this distance between that experience and the Triple Crown happening, I think I did it in 2023. I can see that it did exactly what I wanted to. I didn't understand it at the time, but it got rid of my ego. It got rid of that desire to race. And that was the ultimately like the question I wanted to answer on the Tour Divide, or not Tour Divide, but the Arizona Trail Race, the final race of the series was, am I done racing? And by day 2, when I almost quit, I almost quit several times in the Arizona Trail race. We can talk about that as well. I know you know how tough it is. I knew without a doubt in my mind that my racing days are over. And so that was really beautiful that like not only did the psilocybin experience lift this entire weight off of my shoulders mentally, physically, spiritually, it allowed me to move on with my life in several ways.
So yeah, also like putting kind of that racing ego or that, yeah, whatever that is to bed, and probably set you up really well for the type of experience that you're now having, where there's no time clock and you actually do have dots and people can follow you, but it's a little bit different now.
Yeah, it set me up for meeting some of the most incredible people I know to this day. Marone Golfman, KP, the single speeder, Kyle, Matthew Annabelle, Alexander Huchin, Leo Wilcox, Johnny Price, this huge, I'm forgetting so many people, but this huge community of riders that went out and did not only the Triple Crown, Joe Tonziger with J-Pax and his wife, Chrissy, um, the people that did those races, like instead of going in there with this race mentality, like it's me against them or it's me against myself, it was completely switched to it's me and them. It's all of us. It's all of us versus the rest. And that was strange. That was very strange. Like, how do you stay alive and motivated in a race like that? Like, you want to finish the race. You're not touring. Obviously, you still want to do your best, but you don't have this desire to like dig yourself down to like, meet complete mental and physical drainage. So I called it my sport tour mode.
Yeah.
And I did pretty good. So I couldn't be happier with the results. It was such a beautiful experience in so many different ways.
Well, I had Matt Annabelle on the podcast recently. I don't know if you heard that episode, but
I started to listen to it. Yeah.
You and he rode together for quite some time on AZT, and I know, I mean, I followed along. The AZT in particular was really tough, and you had a particular challenge that nobody else dealt with. You were smacked in the face with a flying dildo, and I asked Matt Annabelle his version of the story, but I also told him and the audience that I would make sure to get your version of that story. So, tell us the drive-by dildo story in Indy's words.
It's hard to sum anything up better than Matt Annabelle, Root Beer Hero, can sum anything up. I mean, he's so eloquent with his words, as we all know. So I would just urge people to go back and listen to his version of it. Because essentially it's what happened, but I can just say that a few things. Like, first of all, like, I've never suffered that much in my entire life and had so much fun. The like 4 days I got to ride with Matt Annabelle was an absolute gift. And when we parted ways, it was because I had a really shit day and I was super tired. We were outside of let's see, I guess it would have been, is it Flagstaff? Yeah, Flagstaff, and it was really cold. And it was only like 8, and I was going to go to bed. Like, temps were dropping. And like, I remember Matt looking at me and he was like, not like this, Indy. Not like this. Like he didn't want that. Like, this is not how it was supposed to end. And I was like, I'm going to try and catch you. I promise. But yeah, we had so much fun. And essentially, like, I'll never forget, like, once that dildo like knocked me off my bike. Like, I don't know if you've ever been hit by a dildo when you're biking.
No.
Yeah, it is it's shocking, believe it or not. And then you're bleeding. And I had thankfully I knew this trick where, like, if your nose is bleeding, you stuff normally like a piece of tissue paper in between your upper gums and your upper lip, because that's where the vein is at. So that will stop the bleeding. Oh. All I had were wet wipes. So I shoved a wet wipe up there, and it just like tastes horrible. I've got my phone out and like I'm trying to fix this thing with a Band-Aid and I'm bleeding. I'm pretty sure my nose is broken. Like you're very shooken up. It's like if you've ever been in a fight or if you've ever fallen or just really close to getting a concussion on your face. Um, yeah. And so the Band-Aids went stick. So I got out the super glue and then I couldn't see. I just had tears in my eyes because of all of the fumes. And thankfully, like the hero he is, Root Beer Hero rails up and he's all like, Indy. And I was like, man down, man down. And he's like, what happened? And I was like, I don't know, dildos, these things. And him and I were just kind of speechless. But I said, hey, can I ride with you? And he was like, absolutely. So that was just one of those beautiful relationships that just kind of spawned out of a few meetings that I had with Matthew, and that's how special the bikepacking community is. When I finished the Colorado Trail, I finished like maybe 10 minutes in front of Johnny Price. He was on a single speed, and I had gone without food for quite some time, and I had been really low on water. So all I could think of was calling a pizza place and getting something delivered. So I said, Johnny, I'm calling up Domino's. What do you want? It's on me. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, this is what I'm getting. And he was like, I'll get the same thing, right? So we ordered that. And then maybe an hour later, Root Beer Hero rose up, Matthew Annabelle. And I had a few pieces of pizza left. And I said, hey, like, would you like some pizza? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And so that's when I met him. And I started to follow his Instagram. And he told this incredible story about, like, if you look at his tracker on that year, 2023 Colorado Trail, like he was crushing it. And then the mountain pass in between, it's the one I think between Leadville and Copper. Like he just has like this huge, it looks like a constellation, like it's going back and forth. And he just tells this brilliant story of basically like what happens when you've pushed your body to the extreme limits and your mental fatigue is so strong that you kind of lose your wits. And it was just so beautifully written. I was like, I definitely need to be friends with this guy. And I didn't get to hang out with him before the AZT. I was just there kind of trying to like get used to the heat and stuff like that. But I saw him, it was at like 7:30 after the sun had gone down on day one. And I was plagued with injuries last year. I had COVID lungs. I had bruised my ribs before the AZTR. I had like a blown out back before the Tour Divide. Anyway, so like I was literally laying on the side of the trail trying to catch my breath, and he rolled up and he was like, Indy. And like we talked for a good 10 minutes, like we hugged, and he was like, I love you, brother. And I was like, I love you too. So like I think that was just like a little blip, a sign of like this things to come, like this relationship, this bond that we were about to form. It's something I'll never forget.
Is that your biggest takeaway from your Triple Crown? Is just all the experience, like all the people that you met and all those relationships that you formed, or what was your biggest takeaway from your Triple Crown?
Yeah. The thing I will remember most are the laughs and the experiences I had on trail. I had some really beautiful moments with Marone Golfman on the AZT, as well as the Colorado Trail. Like that poor kid had some issues last year, and he's such a beautiful person. And so we had some really heartfelt moments, and KP, Kyle Peterson, and Matthew Annabelle, and Dirty Dan, like all these people, these names that I've been seeing for years and never gotten to ride with. I will say, yeah, that was the best thing. Alexander Huchin. I remember when I finished the Arkansas high country race, and I slept for 5 hours in the hotel, and then I woke up to see Brett Stepanek come in and win it that year because he was going to set a new single speed record. And him and I went out to breakfast, and I was, talking about this, that, and the other. And he said, I don't know how it came up in the conversation, but he said, if you could aspire to be like any other bike packer, be more like Alexander Huchin. And like, I've always been like a fanboy of hers, and I got to meet her on the Tour Divide. And she's not standoffish. She's she's just very focused, I think, before a race, and she's got a lot going on. So I like ran up and I got a selfie with her, and she's probably like, "Who is this idiot?" You know. And then I got to see her on the Colorado Trail, and she was also very focused. It was in the Twin Peaks section, Twin Lakes section, and she was struggling a little bit. But I got to know her boyfriend Johnny as well during that race, and then the AZT, like she passed me when I was just straight sprawled out under a bush, and she was like, "You're doing great," and I was like, "I haven't moved in 4 hours, you know, like I just can't ride during this heat." But she literally like called me and texted me multiple times after the Triple Crown, and it was like, "Hey, drive by dildo, mental check in, like where's your head at? Where are you at? Like how's life?" And like invited me to go on some bike packing trips with her and John. And that is just like something you don't forget. You know,
Yeah.
that is a beautiful thing for someone to do. So yeah, 100%. It's the people that I will then in these incredible stories that I will remember the most.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. It is really a great community, and it almost seems like anywhere you go, and if you're around bike packers, bike tours, you're going to be around some really good humans, you know? Let's talk about your trip, man. You're on maybe the trip of a lifetime. I don't know how you would characterize it, but give us the like 60,000 view of what you're doing. You know, we haven't actually mentioned that yet. So what are you doing, Indy?
I don't know what I'm doing. I am leaning into the unknown. I feel like I'm the universe experiencing itself. Life is so bizarre and so beautiful, and I am essentially sold everything I owned, and I now live on a bicycle. And I just I flew up to Prudhoe Bay, Deadhorse, Alaska on May 15th to start this journey. And essentially, I put like a time limit of 5 years on it, and then I said 7 years, and then I said 10 years, and now I realized that it will just take as long as it takes. There's no need to put a time limit on it. So I am in tour mode essentially, and it's been really hard. Like the first 4 months in Alaska and Canada, like switching over from not only like having been in the work industry and having this very scheduled, structured lifestyle of working for 24 years, but coming off of 7 years of racing and being like, I can sit down and eat lunch. You know, I was like, had all this prepackaged food with me when I got up to Deadhorse, and I'm like, dude, you can make spaghetti. Like, you don't have to eat these shitty energy bars or whatever, and like, you don't have to be cycling and eating at the same time. You can sit and stop down and like stop and take your time and it was really interesting because you know, when you first get up there, the time of year I went up there, it was 23 and a half hours of daylight. And so if you wanted to, you could ride all day. And I think the first day I rode until like 8 p.m. And maybe I just didn't realize how late it was. But I was like, yeah, I did like 60 miles. Like, let's see what we can do tomorrow. And I was like, let's see how little you can do tomorrow, you know? And it took months. I mean, I think my pinnacle day, one of them has been, it was in Canada, and I stopped at this Lake Elizabeth, and I camped, and it was really beautiful. It was actually the 10-year anniversary of when my brother passed away, and I finally, the stars were back out at this time of year, and I saw my first shooting star the entire trip, which was really special. And then the next day I rode 13 miles to another wreck site, bobtail wreck site, and it was just beautiful. It's this little peninsula, like the sun is shining through the pine trees. It's like 11 a.m. And I looked around and I'm like, that's it. Like, that's all I'm going to ride today. And like, I set up my camp and I was like, man, this is sweet. Like, I did it. I finally did it. Like, I didn't bike more because I could. I stopped because I could.
Yeah.
And I've had all these like aha moments along the trip, keeping a journal and stuff like that. And like, that's one of the top 5 things I've learned is to go slow. And when you go slow, wow, that's when the magic happens. 100%. Like every time, almost without fail, like the universe just gave me like a pat on the shoulder someone would drive up. Hey, we're from Fairbanks. Like, what are you doing? Here's our contact info if you need a place to stay. Here's some homemade muffins. Um, I would see like a grizzly bear. I would see a moose. You just always notice something you didn't notice before. And it's those like little moments that you really cherish. And you realize like sometimes you just got to go slow. So that was a
Pro
big
slow.
aha for me. Yeah, go slow, man. Which is obviously so different than what I've been doing. But like they said, the universe every time I do, and I don't go slow so that something magical will happen. I go slow to appreciate it and be present, and then something magical does happen, and it's like without fail every time something cool happens. Like, oh, there's a butterfly, or I don't know. It's hard to explain. There's just been so many moments where there's just this reaffirmation that that's what I should be doing. It's going slower. So I still think I'm going too fast. The point of that story is I'm still going too fast. I'm still learning to go slow. But yeah, fascinating. The whole trip to Dalton Highway completely blew my mind. There was snow up there. It was 10 degrees the week before I got up there, so I like packed all this extra gear. I think my bike probably weighed 140 pounds with food and water. I had 140 liters of storage. And you're out there and you're on this desolate road. And the week I started, the day I got there, it like kind of warmed up to 30 degrees during the day. So at least the sun was shining. There's still snow, but it's starting to melt. So it was a beautiful time of year. All the animals were coming down to start to get to like the groundwater and like all the vegetation that was popping back up. So there was a ton of wildlife. I dealt with zero mosquitoes, which is a huge problem on the Dalton Highway. You see all these videos and people got these head nets on, and it's like,
Yeah.
you're like it's insane. And I was like, I don't know what they're talking about. So most people start that part of the journey in like mid-June, and you're gonna have warmer weathers. But I also met a really cool couple, the Fun Peddlers, Cassie and Tim. They started late June and they had a lot of rain. They had a lot of mosquitoes, and I didn't have to deal with any of that. So I got really lucky. But same thing, we talked about that like smile and that wave to like keep my connection with humanity out there because you don't see any other cyclists. I just smiled and waved at every truck and every semi truck, and you might see a semi truck, these big oil rigs and stuff carrying stuff to and back from either Fairbanks or Anchorage back up to Deadhorse. So a lot of like metal pipes and things like that. You just wave. You see one every maybe 20 or 30 minutes. And by day 3, pipeline security people started stopping and talking to me. And they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm riding my bike around the world for like 10 years." And they're like, "What? Like, what year are you on?" I'm like, "I'm on like day 12." Or like at that point in time, it was like day 3. And they're like, "Oh," and I would like give them a cycling kindness sticker, but they always wanted to help me. They started giving me snacks and water. And I think it was day 3. It was super magical. Like before I left for this trip, I went down to Costa Rica with that guy Kirk I was telling you about, and his partner Ingrid, and we had a great time. And then we met we befriended some people from Argentina, and they were like trying to like eat some mangoes with us. And I was like, I don't really like mangoes, like this, that, and the other. And they're like, what? Like, how do you not like mangoes? And I was like, well, they're always like stringy and they taste weird. And they're like, you're not eating the right mangoes. So they like basically showed us how to pick out the mangoes, like what the texture should feel like, et cetera, et cetera. And then I started eating these delicious mangoes. And now like I can't get enough mangoes. Like I love mangoes. And I'm in the middle of Alaska. It's day 3. I'm headed up towards Adigan Pass, which is about 4,300 feet. It's the highest elevated point of the Arctic Circle, the Dalton Highway up there. And this car drives by me. Of course, I do like my Forrest Gump wave. And then I see in my rearview mirror, like somebody's approaching really fast. It was actually the same person. They were just in reverse. And he said, "Hey, man, like I heard on the radio what you're doing. Like, do you want some fruit?" And the entire day, all I could think about was mango. And I'm like, how am I going to get a mango in the middle of Alaska? Like, I would kill for a mango. And this guy stops and he hands me this bag of fruit. And there's kiwi, there's nectarine, there's an apple, and at the bottom there's a mango.
Wow.
And I was like, if that's not a sign,
Trail
like I
magic.
don't know what is. I know, just try like, and it's just one of these things where like it's just gonna sound weird, but like there's a lot of times where I'm out here and it just seems like so plain and simple that like I'm really manifesting my life. And it's weird. The more I'm out here, the more time I spend alone. Like I feel like I'm definitely in a simulation, or I'm in like some sort of sim game. Like none of this is real. Uh, there's times where I'm like, am I an old person who's in a coma and like I'm living a past life? You know,
You're
like
still on that mushroom trip. You're still on that hero dose right
I,
now. You just
you
haven't
know,
come out of
like
it.
I'm like, who's to say I'm not? Like I don't know, but it's one of those things. I've also listened to like a lot of Alan Watts out here in bits and pieces, and you know, one of his things, he's like, you just can't take life too seriously. He's like, you can be sincere about life, but there's no point in being serious. Like we are the universe experience itself. Like we are here to have fun. Like we're just a tiny little bit that's part of this huge conglomerate, you know. And when you think about life like that, it's really beautiful. At least for me, like it makes it more enjoyable. Why would I be serious about these things? Why would I care about money and like status and et cetera, et cetera? And it's interesting because like I've started to lean so far the other way where it's like I have this like idea the universe keeps talking to me and it keeps telling me like less is more. And I was talking to Kirk about this. I'm like, I don't know what it means. Like, I don't know. At some point in time, I'm going to do like the Christopher McCandless thing, where like I donate all of my money and like disappear completely. I don't know. I don't know what that means, but like I just feel like, and maybe it's like a Buddhist sort of way to think about things. But like at some point in time, I feel like I already have very little, but I feel like I haven't surrendered fully to the fact that I'm not in control. Like I still think like there's parts of this trip I'm in control of. And so when I get a feeling like should I go down this road? Like should I let curiosity be my guide? I'm starting to lean into that a lot and just say like yes. Like unless you get a bad feeling, right? Like your stomach will tell you like, oh, this drunk guy's waving around a gun. Should I go talk to him? Probably not, you know. But
Unless you're me in El
I don't,
Salvador, and then
it's no comprende. There we go. No, it's just like you have so much time out here, and it's really beautiful. And it'll be interesting to see where I'm at in like 2 or 3 years, mentally, physically. This trip is called Cycling Kindness. Like that's my handle. It's about giving back, and I do so many like acts of kindness throughout the day. I don't post about them because it's not it's not about that. But it is beautiful because you do start to touch people's lives, and you can see the change physically, like when you and mentally, like when they brighten up. You see the smile when you do something nice for somebody that's unexpected, especially when you're a traveler in a strange land, or these people that let me stay in their houses in Alaska. The Alaskan community was just so awesome. Like, oh, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna mow your lawn for you because I know you're at work, and like we're gonna go rafting this weekend. So like, why wouldn't I just do something nice for you? But a bigger part of this trip is about being of service to our fellow man. I think that's kind of the meaning of life, is being of service to each other. So I was able to do 2 weeks of volunteer work in Halibut Cove, which is really special. I helped this woman, Carmen, do a lot of like clearing of shrubbery and like cutting down pine trees and creating this fire barrier for her house. And it was really bizarre because I was staying in this like brand new, built on this old dock on this bluff overlooking Ketchmick Bay studio, like Scandinavian style, 180-degree full windows, looking at sunrise, sunset. I had a bald eagle's nest like right by my place. And I felt kind of conflicted because I'm like, obviously, this woman has money. And the only reason I was conflicted was that I had created this expectation internally in my head that like, I'm going to do volunteer work. Like I'm going to save the world, like I'm going to help starving people in Africa. And I had realized like helping someone is helping someone. There's no difference, that you shouldn't prioritize like you're still helping somebody.
Yeah.
And I met this wonderful person named Kelly, who's a good friend of Maroon's up in Anchorage. And I like kind of, we share voice memos back and forth. And I had told her like about this confliction. I was like, but now I've shifted the mindset, like I'm just helping someone, and that's the important part. And she was like, and also like you should be very grateful that you're in this place. Like there's so many people from Alaska that will never get to visit Halibut Cove because you have to take a boat ride out there. And it's essentially like this artist community filled with like a lot of older people. Like it's kind of like a 50 plus older community. So um, yeah, you just kind of have to shift your mindset every once in a while. And eventually I will get to Africa and I will be able to do volunteer work. But yeah, speaking of that woman, Carmen, she's actually in Todos Los Santos. So I'm probably going to see her in about 6 days. And she has a friend who runs a horse sanctuary down here. So hopefully I'm going to get to do another week or two of volunteer work.
Awesome, man.
But yeah, I think that's just a beautiful way of learning about these communities, connecting with the cultures, and essentially giving back. I don't know if there's anything greater than doing that. So it's been beautiful. Been beautiful so far.
I love that, my friend.
It's been a great simulation.
I'm enjoying this simulation.
Yeah.
Well, I was picturing you on this trip on the Dalton Highway, coming from, being, I don't want the phrase is average American coming to mind, but I don't want to refer to you as average, but I mean, you have a house, you have a job, you have a car, bills, all the things. And then I know, how long did you plan this trip for? I feel like you and I were talking about it for years, or you were mentioning it for years before you actually, and a lot of things probably had to come together for you to be able to actually do something like this. How long have you been planning to do this trip?
Yeah, I think 2017 when I rode the American Trail Race. It kind of clicked in my head like this could be how I travel the world. When I was in second grade, I did a piece of art, and it was like travel the 7 continents, and it was like me on a globe and like crayon stick figure, and continent was horribly misspelled. So this has been a lifelong goal, since I was like 6 or 7. I've always wanted to travel the world. And then in 2017, made that connection that it could be on a bicycle. And then from there, it was just figuring out how to do it. Having the responsibilities at home with like helping my parents out after my brother had passed away, and like kind of figuring out the logistics of how to get it to work, but always like in the back of my mind, like, yes, this is going to happen. And then as the closer I got to the departure date, I just started to kind of make hard deadlines of like, I'm going to be here at this time. I'm going to be doing this at this time. And just like sharing those with my mom, because obviously I had to make sure she was taken care of. So yeah, there was a few things where I think the universe was kind of testing me. Like one of them was like the universe was like, do you really want this? And I'm like, yes, I do. So I had to rehome my dog, Pepper. Love her so much. And she's that little bee is living her best life. My friend's parents took her, and they're retired, and she loves to swim. And they used to have a lab, and they never thought they'd find another dog that loved to swim as much as their lab. And Pepper was a black German Shepherd mix, and they have an in-ground pool, and they put in a doggy door for her. So she's not swimming right now because it's winter in Illinois, but she's swimming every day in summer.
Yeah, she's enjoying her simulation.
Yeah, exactly. And once I let go of that, things that like the puzzle pieces started to fall into place, because I had written these letters to the universe dated 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. And the 1 year letter, I opened it up after I got back from a hiking trip in Torres del Paine, Chile. And I remember talking to my friend Brian, and I was like, I think 5% of this has happened. And I was like, that's okay. Don't get discouraged. Like, this is just a test. Like, you keep going. And that's something you learn through bikepacking. Like, everything is impermanent. This can change at any given moment. Like, sometimes you're down, sometimes you're happy. You just, you do the best you can, and you kind of stay focused and learn that, like, you can only do your best. There's so many things that are out of your control. Um, you can kind of guide where you're going, but the universe is going to throw you curveballs, and you just have to be okay with it. Like you sit there and you say, yeah, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And if I wasn't, I would be somewhere else. It's like
Yeah.
that simple.
It,
So, but yeah, you keep plugging away and keep chugging away. So yeah, probably 7 hard years in the making to make this come true.
I think like a lot of people who go bikepacking, dream of one day selling everything and living on the bike, right? I know I certainly do. I'm raising kids for the next 10 years, but I think, in 10 years, do I do this? And like I was saying earlier, like I was picturing you on the Dalton Highway, and I can think of, I mean, that's one of the most like unpopulated, desolate, barren, places that you could start a trip in, and how in stark contrast that is to, the life that you were living. And there's nothing to hide from, right? There's nothing to distract you from the reality of this new life that you're embarking on. Did you have like, oh shit moments, or was it more of a release of everything you worked for 7 years kind of coming to fruition?
Mm. It was a combination of all of those. Like it is uh, yeah, it's a mixed bag of emotions. And I didn't listen to any music. I think the Dalton Highway took me 9 days. I didn't listen to any music. There's a lot of room for self-doubt to creep in, which is weird because I'm a fairly confident person. And like I was obviously pretty sure I wanted to do this. I thought about my family a lot, like when my brother and my dad were alive, and like what we used to do as a family. And um, at the same time, there was a lot of joy and a lot of beauty, and there was so much going on in my head. And I had met with Janie Hayes in Salida. Shout out to Janie Hayes. Janie sees the world, winner of the 2017 Trans Am bike race. She's a beautiful person. Her and I had an awesome coffee get together in Salida, and her husband Jimmy showed up for a little bit. He was asking me how I was going to like kind of catalog this trip, and I'm like, yeah, I want to keep a journal, but it's kind of hard. And he suggested that I start using voice memos on the phone. And so I
Yep.
found that like you have all this stuff going on in your head, and it's like a washing machine. Like it just keeps going around and around and around until you like take it out and put it in the dryer. So essentially, like putting those thoughts into the voice memo and then into my journal started to like clear up the cache in my brain. And so like I worked through all of these thoughts and these feelings and these emotions and these questions, and I think of a very healthy manner. And by the time I reached Fairbanks, which was like day 9, to meet up with Tyson Flaherty, who I met on the Arizona Trail. Shout out to Tyson and his wife and their beautiful family. I like my headspace was pretty good. But yeah, I started out and I was just kind of like, wait, what?
Yeah.
There's disbelief, there's doubt, there's excitement. It's the full gauntlet of emotions, but there was also some really beautiful clarity out there as well. Like I think it was like day 3, I figured out the secret of life, and that's just to be present. Like I've been reading about it and I've been hearing about it my entire life, and then you kind of like you sit down and you figure it out for a moment, and you're like, holy shit, like this is what we have. And ever since then, like if I call somebody and they're like, hey, I'm out walking the dog or I'm with my family, I'm like, cool, like call me back when you're not busy. Like the last thing you want to do is take somebody out of the present moment and
Yeah.
try and cultivate that awareness. And like whatever I'm doing is not important. Like we'll get together when you have time. But that's the beautiful thing is like, and like I've seen it. I've told people that and I've like shared it with them, and I've seen it affect like my friends with kids. And like I talked to my friend Mike, and he's like, dude, he's like, I get home from work. He's like, all I want to do is just hang out with my kids. And he's like, this is just like, he's like, he's got a 2.5-year-old and an 8-month-old. And he's like, yeah, Joey's just dragging Benny around the carpet, and it's the most beautiful thing in the world. And I'm like, I love how present you are right
Yeah.
now. Like it's so beautiful. And I do think that's like the secret of life is the now. And I started a meditation practice. Like I've been practicing meditation for about 6 years, but I'm now on like every day for over 8 months now. And I think that's been a huge part of this journey, and this sort of shifting of the mindset of being able to slow down and just like sometimes you just sit and just see what's happening. Cultivate stillness, cultivate silence.
Oh,
It's beautiful.
that was funny. You said cultivate silence and then you cut out for a second, but now you're back. um,
There we go. The
yeah,
universe
one
just thanked
thing,
us.
yeah, they did. Bing. Something I've shared on the podcast quite a few times, so I apologize to listeners, but there's a phrase from a song that I always repeat to me and to myself, and that's be here now. What a place to be. And it's just a simple mantra that I use to try to just stay in the present, because oftentimes we get bogged down by things we've done in the past or worried about, what's going to happen in the future. But it's easier said than done. But the secret does seem to be just appreciating the moment that you're in and doing the best with what you have and, right in front of you. Actually, I remember Billy Rice when we were, I don't know if you'll remember this, when we were at the pre-race meeting for GranGravel 2018, he said, just, get really granular and to the point where you're just looking at that rock right in front of your tire. And can I go one more pedal stroke? But he was really encouraging us at the GranGravel 500 to just be present, in this moment right now. Focus on the little rock that's right in front of your tire, and that's another, good way of looking at it. Is just be here now, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, there's been so many moments, especially these big, crazy climbs in Alaska and Canada where you kind of do that just to get through because it's so difficult. And you don't want to remove yourself from that situation. You want to be present. And yeah, I'll play these silly games where like I'm playing asteroid with the rocks in front of me, and I'm like do, just like one step at a time. And some of these climbs are like an hour and a half, 2 hours long, and then you get to the top and you look back, and that's I think one of the beautiful things about Alaska and Canada is you have these. You're rewarded every time you get to the top of the climb. Like you just look around and you're like, wow, here is the Brooks Range of Alaska that I've been reading about and hearing about for so long. And it's so vast and so beautiful. It's really crazy. Alaska blew my mind. My new favorite state for sure. It's so big and
Really?
there's so little people. Yeah. And the people in Alaska are hardcore. Like there's no room for error in Alaska. I don't think it's like,
Right.
yeah, I lived in Colorado and I thought like people in Colorado are hardcore, but and they are. There's definitely, don't get me wrong, some top people in Colorado, but there's a lot of bro bras as well. Like you just don't play games in Alaska because it's so remote and there's so few people out there. Um, and like one of the cool things is like when I was at Tyson's house, I got to meet his wife's Deborah's parents, and her father had done a couple really epic trips, and he told me about, and this is in like the 70s, they did a 21-day sea kayaking trip, and it rained for 18 of the 21 days. He did a month-long cross-country ski tour with a friend, and they got snowed in the tent, like could not leave the tent for 3 solid days. And I looked at him, and I was just about to ask him, and he must have read my mind. He goes, yeah, you got to be really good friends with somebody to be in a tent for 3 solid days. And I was like, cool. I'm glad like you guys are still friends, but like that's a whole nother level. And it was so cool to hear these stories from like these people that have they moved up there for some reason. Sometimes it was jobs, sometimes it was to seek like a bigger, grander sort of adventure. And life is slow up there, like, and it's beautiful. Like a lot of the places, it's just so small. Most of the population lives in Anchorage, so you don't realize how far it is to get from town to town. And they're explorers, like on a whole different level. I
Yeah.
couldn't do it personally because of the winters, not having lights. I know you have like the beautiful northern lights at night, but not having daylight in the winter, I think would be a real struggle for me. But people in Alaska, shout out to them. Caleb, I met Caleb during the Tour Divide. Him and I and Marone went mountain biking there. It's just cool. It's cool to like see their lives there. There's this guy Adrian that's a professional photographer. He reached out to me and um, yeah, we did like a little photo shoot, and then he told me about his life. And like, this is a guy who I didn't know about, and has done the Trans Am, he's done the Baja Divide, he's done all these races that I had done, and told me about his life story. And that's been like a really cool thing. Is like, I think I reached a lot of people with this article that I did on bikepacking.com. So I kind of just like threw it all out there. And just like, whatever, I'm going to talk about the psilocybin trip. I'm going to be vulnerable. And what you learn is like, without vulnerability, there's no connection.
Hmm.
And you have to open up to these people. And that's kind of especially even out here, like where I don't speak the language as much, like you learn that we all just want to, at the end of the day, have enough water, have food, and have like a safe place to sleep in, as very essential. And then you learn that people, like, you see all these shrines out here in the Baja. It's crazy. Like, you'll climb up to this mountain vista, and then there's a shrine, and there's all these discarded burnt candles. And I think that's a really beautiful thing about the culture here, is they really honor their loved ones,
Yeah.
in a deeper sense. You know, it's not this like really rigid structure cemetery with all these gray looking headstones and plaques. It's like these shrines that they have built themselves by hand with candles, and they go up there. I don't know how often they go up there, but they're all over. They're all over the country. They'll be in the middle of nowhere. And it's
Yeah.
like, wow,
In
there's
the
even
middle
a
of
shrine.
nowhere. Yeah. That was, yeah,
Yeah,
we just
yeah.
got back from bikepacking in Oaxaca. And I mean, I've traveled through Oaxaca, but that's something that stands out to me too. And we stopped at a number of these shrines and cemeteries, and, you know, it's so much more vibrant and a little, maybe an oxymoron to say, but full of life. They bring, you know, a Modelo or a Coke can or a teddy bear, and they really honor their family heritage in a way that I really appreciate and respect, and it feels good and it feels right. You know, it feels special. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. I mentioned that for anyone who wants to, they can follow your journey on Track Leaders, and you'll see you went through Alaska and Canada, and then there's a straight line through America where you skipped America and picked up on the Baja Divide. Did you just skip America because you've ridden the Tour Divide? I don't know how many times. I know you've ridden it a few times. Why'd you skip
Just
America?
once.
Just once?
Um, yeah, just once. Yeah.
Well,
Um,
in my mind,
I
you've
think
ridden it
so.
like 10 times. That's how highly I think of you.
I've been across the country 4 times, so
Okay.
you know, so
Yeah.
I've definitely seen a lot of America. But unfortunately, my mom fell really ill, and she was hospitalized, and I had to just I was in a situation where I was in Kelowna picking up a new frame bag from Shaka Packs. Shout out to Julian. So I happened to be in a city where there was an airport. And like, as soon as I got word that she was in the hospital, like it wasn't even a choice. It was like, I have to go home. Right. And she was, love my mom. She was, did not want me to come home. She's like, I'm not going to ruin your trip. Um, you need to stay out there. This has been your dream for so long. And so I had to kind of flip that narrative with her. And I said, hey, I don't have to come home. I get to come home. Like, what an honor it is. And I said,
Mm.
how cool is it that your son is like semi-retired, you know, and I want to be there for you, you know. So I let her know that, like, this, and I said I said something really stupid, like like getting back on this journey is as easy as learning to ride a bike again, you know,
Yeah.
because it is. All I have to do is ride my bike. And it was something that was obviously it was a brainer decision, with my father being gone and my brother being gone and her having a dog and obviously a condo that needs to be cared for. So yeah, I'm so grateful that I was able to book a flight in a couple days. And um, I think I had like three layovers, but then my friend Mike Kinney and his family picked me up in Chicago. So I got to, where I'm from is like 2.5 hours from Chicago. So I got to sit in the back of a minivan with those two kids I was telling you about, baby Jojo and little Benny, and like feed Benny as he's like crying and wailing and like make faces at baby Jojo. And it's really beautiful. So like that whole trip home, I kept a journal of silver linings, to kind of remind myself that like this isn't part of the journey, this is the journey.
Hmm.
And I think too often, we get caught in this mode of, once again, like we think we're in control, and this isn't what I imagined. I'm supposed to be riding the Western Wildlands route right now. I'm not supposed to be in Illinois, and that can cause us so much discomfort and so much anxiety and so much pain. Whereas if we just realize this is the journey,
Hmm. You're on it.
like I'm on it. I'm on it. It's okay. Like it doesn't have to. Whoever said it has to be this way. Um, and if you can accept that and go with it, you're going to be okay. Like I met somebody the other day, and they were telling me like, you have three options in life. You can try and swim upstream and fight. You can not do anything at all and just drown, or you can obviously just go with the flow. And so yeah, when you resist those big things, because you've, once again, it was like that whole thing with the volunteer work I had created. If you create this movie in your head that you're starring in, that like this is going to be my life, when it doesn't turn out to be that way, you can get very upset.
Yeah.
And I think that happens far too often. And it's okay to be upset, like if you don't like get like the results you want for this, that, or the other. Like you keep trying and whatever. But in like this type of situation where like something was just different than I expected, it was totally fine. So for me, it was great. It was what a beautiful thing for me to be able to go home and help my mom, who's now doing wonderful. But yeah, she was in the hospital for a long time, which allowed me to actually reset a bit of my bike setup. Did my wonderful eBay thing, sold some of my gear, bought some new gear, lightened. I went from, I think, 140 liters of capacity down to 70 liters of capacity. I got rid of my drone. I got rid of my GoPro. I got rid of the backpack, switched tents, switched out one of my Old Man Mountain racks for a different Old Man Mountain rack, and just kind of fine tuned things. And I got to spend some really good time with my mom and quality time with my mother. So super grateful for that part of the journey. And then, like life being what it is, like I talked to Marone Golfman, and he said, hey, when you're flying to San Diego, I've got a friend there named Dave. So I talked to this guy, Dave, and he's like, yeah, we can pick you up, this, that, and the other. And so Dave picks me up from the airport. I'm like, how did you meet Marone? And he said, well, he was on the side of the road with like his girlfriend at the time and a couple of fat bikes, and they were going to do the Baja Divide. And so like I just pulled over and asked if they needed help, and they ended up staying at my house. And then the following year was when Marone did the FKT for the Baja Divide, and he stayed at Dave's house with the film crew when they started and when they finished. And I'm like, yeah, of course you met Marone Golfman on the side of the road. There's like another one of those beautiful connections that would never have happened had I not done the Tour Divide last year. So
Yeah.
yeah,
You
so
mentioned
it's a wonderful community. Okay.
You mentioned your setup, and that was something I was curious about. If you would, as you go through this trip, will you be changing your equipment and your setup frequently, do you think? Or is your ultimate goal to like just get the most dialed bike setup and all the gear so that you can go anywhere and have anything you could need at any possible moment?
I mean, that would be ideal, but the later part, but it's just not um, feasible, I guess, or reasonable logistically. Like you just can't have it all I mean, I started with so much shit in Deadhorse. Like, when I got to Fairbanks, I was giving Tyson, like, here's my hammock. Like, I brought a hammock up there. There's no trees in the Arctic Circle. Like, I'm not gonna need a hammock until I get to Costa Rica. But I thought, like, oh, it's a pound and a half. It's not gonna hurt that much. Like, no, after you've ridden a 150-pound bike for 9 days, you want to get rid of a bunch of shit. So essentially, I have it dialed into, I have a few luxury items, and the rest is all I feel like pretty essential. But like gear just is not going to last. Things are going to break down. Like my camera was broken when I got here. My iPhone is doing a thing where it turns the volume down every time I hit a bump on the road. Like the volume just goes down. Like things are just like starting to break. So it's just keeping things together just enough so that we stay on the road. I feel like every time I get to a town, I have a list of like 10 to 15 items, and I'll get like 4 done. And then I'm like, okay, it's time to get back on the road, like and go sleep under the stars. Um, but essentially, yes, you do dial things in. My setup is, for those that don't know, I have a pinion drivetrain, which is pretty maintenance free. Um, it's a belt drive, which lasts for a very long time. I change the oil in it every 6,000 miles. I'm probably going to have tires or something that are a maintenance item that you have to kind of think about. The rear ones usually last anywhere from 3 to 4,000 miles, and the front almost double that. So I think I have a friend meeting me in Oaxaca, who I might just have him come out with a new rear tire. Tents. I already broke a tent pole on my new tent, so I got a hose clamp and electrical tape on that. It's pretty sweet, but everything's figure outable. And like I said, like I tell my friend Kirk, like the universe just keeps like taking things away from me, and I'm like, okay, like I don't need that. Like my computer, I had a brand new MacBook Pro, uh, and when I went to catch my flight out of leaving my mom's house to San Diego, there was an ice storm, so everything was delayed multiple hours, and I had gotten through security, and I had everything in my bike box except for one pannier, and I had my water bottle, which has a lid on it, which has a lock on the lid. And so when I got through security, I filled up my water bottle, and then 2 hours in the airport, realized my mom's gonna have to come pick me up, and I was gonna catch a later flight. And I put the water bottle in the pannier, and the lid wasn't locked, so like all my electronics got wet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I guess I don't need a laptop anymore. Like I don't, like, and then I carried it with me because like it turned on for a little bit and then it like fried out, and I was like, maybe it'll dry out in the Baja. So it didn't. And now I'm carrying like this 4 pound weight, right? And I'm like, I'll just be able to mail it home, but there's really no mail on the Baja. It's a peninsula. And I got to Catavina, and I met this father-son duo from Canada, and we met them the first night. We wrapped out with them for a little bit. I was traveling with this woman, Corey from Tucson, who I met. Shout out to Corey. Got to ride with her for 3 weeks. Awesome woman. And then the next morning, we talked to the Canadians, and I was like, "Hey, wild question. Feel free to say no, but like, I have a laptop. I need mailed back home." And they're like, "We'll do it." And I was like, "Cool. Like, I'll give you guys $100. I want to buy you guys lunch, whatever." And he was like, "Don't mention money again." And I was like, "Okay." Oh, that was kind of strange. And then I gave him the laptop, and I tried to hide the money in there. And he like comes back 5 minutes later, and he like shoves the money back at me. And I was like, "I said no money." And I was like, "Dude, like I can't have you like paying for my mistake." And he was like, "I have a corporate account." So shout out to Mac Senior and Mac Junior for doing that. But that's just like the like on the road, you just you figure it out. And so yeah, now I like have to edit my photos on my phone, and it's really sad, and it takes a lot of time. But I don't know. Like by the end of this journey, I think I'm not gonna have a phone. I'm probably not gonna have social media. I'm just gonna have a map and a
Wow.
bike.
Well, you do what you got
I
to
don't
do. I'll
know.
miss following along your journeys, but I'll be thinking about you for sure.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what
We'll see.
happens. I don't know.
One of the other things I wanted to ask you about that, like, I think about, because I have this dream, right? This like fantasy maybe of like, yeah, just living off the bike for an undetermined amount of time. But the thing that I was
Hmm.
thinking about is loneliness. Like I always think I would like to do it with somebody else because I think that I would get lonely. I also, value shared experiences. And, when, I don't know, Natalie and we just went on a ride this past weekend and two foxes just were chasing each other right across the road. And we were like, holy shit, I can't, and we like had that kind of beautiful shared experience. And it was, so I'm curious, like, are you getting lonely? And if so, like what do you do to combat that loneliness? Or are you finding that you just don't get lonely out there?
Mm, I don't.
Wow.
I don't, and I think that depends a lot on people's personalities, extroverts versus introverts. I've run across a couple of extroverts out here, and like, yeah, they like want to talk to you and blah 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 blah, and like they like that you can feel their energy. Like when they're around another person, they get super excited. I have a very interesting personality type. I'm a true introverted extrovert. And it was interesting. I had my power animal red, and the woman's like, you have, and it's this charged woman in where I'm from. She's like 70 years old. Her name's Kathleen Collins. And she's like, you have two power animals, and one of them is a great blue heron, which is where I kind of get this like solitude, determination sort of part of my characteristic, and then the other one is a river otter, which is a super playful, curious animal. So it's interesting. I don't get lonely. Like I'm alone, but I never feel like I'm alone. Like there's I don't know, the creators out there. There's animals. There's always some sort of magic in the air to like that I'm vibing off of. Or there's just like laying down and looking at the stars or watching the sunrise and the sunset. It's like the most beautiful thing in the world. Recently, I did ride with like I mentioned that woman Corey from Tucson, and we met on like day 4 in Ojos Negros. And I was like, oh, let's see how this works. Like I think I was only able to do that because of my Triple Crown experience. Like I rode with KP for like 8 days on the Tour Divide. And I rode with Matt Annabelle for like 4 days, and Marone for like maybe 4 or 5 days throughout all those 3 races. Whereas I've always ridden solo on the races. And I used to say it was my superpowers. Like I could spend an infinite amount of time outdoors solo. Now the interesting thing is like I'm in La Paz right now, and it's a city, and like I got a tinge of loneliness yesterday. I'm terrible in the cities. Like I feel like there's so many people and it's just so hard to connect. Whereas when you're going through these vast countrysides, like you meet somebody and like you're just there, and it's like you and the other person meet, and you have to kind of acknowledge each other, and you almost know each other on a deeper level because there's no distractions.
Mm.
You're meeting face to face, especially with like these ranchers out here and just other people on the trail. So those interactions are really cool. Riding with Corey was awesome. I think we spent 3 weeks together, which was a personal record for me. And at the end of the day, we probably could have ridden longer, but she had a plane to catch. So I was like, yeah, like I'm going to slow down. Where she kind of needed to speed up. And then I rode with Mattia and this guy Kevin from San Bonico, small world. Kevin worked for the San Diego Fire Department for 30 years, has been retired, I think, 8 years. And he knew the guy, Dave, that I stayed with in San Diego because Dave worked at the fire department.
Wow.
So I put those guys back in touch together, which is really cool. Dave's going to come down and visit Kevin. And then we met another guy, Sam in Mulahay, and another guy, Jake from Colorado. And then after that, I kind of needed some personal space. So I just rode by myself to La Paz, where I am. But I had this thought the other day where like I always talk about getting outside of the comfort zone, and like that's where you grow the most. And my thought was, since I'm doing like what I love every single day so much, like am I stuck am I stuck in a comfort zone and I don't know it? But my answer is no. Like I'm so uncomfortable every day. Like there's just shit that's out of my control. Like the climbing is tough. I run out of water. I don't know. Things just happen, right?
But
And
it
then
speaks to like
also like,
your, go ahead.
no, go.
I was going to say, it sounds like it speaks to like, you're having that question, am I in the comfort zone? It probably speaks to the fact that you're where you want to be, or feel like, you're being fulfilled by your trip.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll be in mainland Mexico here in probably a couple weeks, and like it's going to be drastically different than where I'm at in Baja. I'm going to be going through cities, and there's going to be people, and it's a lot less wild camping until I get back into Guatemala. So that will make me very, no, I guess uncomfortable in a sense of like it's going to be a very drastic change of scenery in a way. So, but yeah, interestingly enough, like since I've been out here, I feel physically like I'm aging backwards. I feel younger and younger every day. Mentally, I've had pretty much zero days of sadness, 0 days of depression, and like I just love being outside. It's
Yeah.
really crazy. Like that was a big question mark. Like, can you live outside for like 90% of the rest of your life? And for me, the answer is yes. Like
Yeah.
I freaking love it. When I went back home, it was really strange. I went back to Illinois to help my mom. Like I was in a basement room. All of a sudden, I went from 24 hours outside into like almost 24 hours inside, and like things are loud, and like driving the car, I felt like I was high, as I was like, oh my god, I'm like why is everybody driving over the speed limit? Like, what's going on? And then after living there for 3 months, I was just back to like my old ways. I don't know, life was interesting. So I do appreciate like the lifestyle that I'm living in, and every morning um, wake up and do meditation. I'm very grateful for it. So it's very much appreciated.
What does a day in the life for you look like now as a person that lives on their bike? Like, how do you have a rigid plan or a schedule, or how do you decide, like, I'm going to do this today? I'm going to get a hotel. I'm going to camp. Like, are you just figuring out on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, and it's been it is on a daily basis. So using a couple tools at my disposal. There's a really good app called Map Out that the Fun Peddlers Tim and Cassie told me about, and it only works for iPhone, unfortunately, but it's $4.99. It pays for the entire app. And it's really cool because you can draw along your route, and it'll tell you elevation. Obviously, for the link you selected, it works very seamlessly offline. So I kind of do like in Canada, in Alaska, is like maybe I could do 50 miles or 5,000 feet of elevation change and get to a camp spot. Or if there's a really great camp spot coming up, I would stop. There's a few places where I saw like my ideal camp spot is like there's running water I can go bathe in. There's some pine trees or some sort of shelter, and it's off the road. And there's a few spots in Alaska and Canada where like I found those locations, and I always carry extra food. I always carry extra water so I can stay in those places for a couple of days. And you just like hang out and like and just be in nature. But essentially, like I wake up when the sun comes up, maybe a half hour before sunrises. Um, Now that I actually have sunrise and sunset. Um, in Alaska, you sleep with the buff on because it's sunny all the time. But yeah, it's really easy. It's really simple. And there's that saying in bikepacking, "Kiss, keep it simple, stupid." Like I feel like this is as simple as it could possibly be, and there's a great joy in knowing that like today and every day is going to be very fulfilling, and I'm going to connect. I'm going to be outside and remind myself that I'm not a separate entity of nature. Like I am nature, and you're reminded of that every day. And it's also interesting, like places like Alaska and Canada, like you also realize if you're not. Let's see, how do you put this? You're not in danger, but like you have to be very bear aware. And so like the whole time I had, bear mace with me. Everywhere I went, I had bear mace. And there's these added processes of like storing your food in a different location from where you cook your food, from where you sleep. And like that became such a drag. Like it wasn't just your food, but it's like your chapstick, your toiletries, wet wipes, anything that may smell has to be a certain distance away from your tent. It's supposed to be, I think, 100 meters or 100 feet. And I'm super stoked that like I'm in a spot now where nothing can really kill me. I mean, something could kill me if they wanted, but they're not going to like I don't have any bears. There's no bears
Yeah.
out here, so stoked about that. But every day is new and different. Like it's all I have to think about is the biggest problem I have every day is where am I going to sleep? Do I have enough water? Where am I going to sleep? And then when you get to towns, it's they're all different. They're always different than what you expect. Like you can see something on a map and then you get there and you're like, huh, like this looked a lot different on the map. Like you expect like, I don't know, have like some modern amenities and it could be like just this really old rustic town with a small tienda, or it could be completely opposite. Like I got to Bahia de Los Angeles and they're like, oh, it's a big touristy town. Like expect touristy prices. Well, it's the off season right now. So there's like nobody there. I don't know, I was like thinking I was going to see chicks in bikinis walking around, and there's like nobody there. I'm like, yep, that's what you get for making expectations.
There you go. Expectations.
Yeah.
Has tour life fully settled in at this point? I mean, when you're talking, you're kind of painting like a very romantic, like in my mind, it's something like I keep saying that I really fantasize about and think about wanting to do sometime. And I was all, you also made me remember like the conversation I was having about with Matt Annabelle about how like, when we, the way society is set up is like a new thing. Like humans have not evolved to be indoors and work 8 to 5s and drive in cars and all this stuff. Right. So like when we actually take ourselves out of that and we get back into nature and we're using our body and our brains the way that they were evolved and designed to do, it's really freeing and liberating, and you get to experience your own body and your brain in a way that I feel like it was meant to be experienced. Have you like fully settled into this way of life as a bike tour, as a person traveling the world? Is that fully settled in for you now?
So first of all, that's a great way to put it, and I totally agree with what you and Matthew were saying. And I've thought about that a lot out here. Like this is how we used to do it, and I feel like there's a new I unlocked a new level of life where I was like, this feels really good. This nomadic lifestyle, and it has sort of settled in. I would say like a big epiphany I had after spending that 3 months back where I grew up was that I didn't feel like I belonged there. And when I'm on the road, I feel like I belong, which was really odd. And never knew like a nomadic lifestyle could be so fulfilling. You always think like you're going to have like maybe some FOMO of like missing out and blah, 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 blah. And I think what causes that, what can cause it is now we have the technology to like see what people are doing in other places. But like I see things happening and like, oh, it's great. Like my friend's daughter just had her birthday or something like that. And like, I'm like, that's cool. But like, I am so stoked to be where I am. And I think that's part of that, like cultivating that gratitude on a daily basis through like meditation and awareness. Yeah, I think you would love it. And the other thing that's like incredible is like it's pretty cheap.
Yes.
And I'm living off of like $1,000 a month, which
Wow.
I read this book, and it was interesting. 3 different people gave it to me in the span of 2 months. It's
Whoa.
called so I was like, I guess I need to read it. It's called
That's
Falling
a sign.
Uphill. Yeah.
Falling Uphill. I've heard of this.
Yeah. I think Scott Stoll. I stayed with his Warm Showers host, Edwin, named in Vernon. And Warm Showers is a really cool it's an app, but it's also it's just a really cool resource it's for cyclists from other cyclists, and essentially these people open up their houses to you and let you stay for free. Like they're not supposed to charge you. Like that's against the rules of Warm Showers hosting. So, anyways, this guy Edwin, like I connected with him in Vernon, Canada, and like I'm like, you never really know what to expect, right? It's that vulnerability of like, this is a complete stranger and I'm going to go stay in their house. So I get to his house. It's like this beautiful condo, and there's this world map. And I start talking to him, and he's like super excited to talk to me. And he's like, "Yeah, you got the whole downstairs. Like, you got your own bed. Here's laundry, blah blah blah. Like anything you need, just let me know." And we start. He's like, "Where have you been?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm on like like month 3 of 10 years or whatever. Like I just started." And I was like, "How do you know so much about cycling?" And he's like, "I cycled around the world in 2004." And I was like, what? And I think his trip took him like 4 years. So the point of the story is like Edwin is actually in the book Falling Uphill. He's in like, I don't know, chapter 24 or something. There's this hilarious story where he trades a pen to a shepherd for one of the lambs. And like, it's really comical. Like the shepherd's like, no, you got to pay for the lamb. He's like, I've got the pen. If you want the pen, like I want the lamb. And finally the shepherd like gives him the lamb, and he starts like cycling away with the lamb. And he's like, okay, like joke's over. Now I got to like go get my pen back. And he's like, hey, like obviously I can't take the lamb. I'll take my pen back. And the shepherd's like, mm-mm. Like the shepherd knew, like, what are you going to do with this lamb? Really funny story. So anyways, he tells me about this book. And so I read the book, and this guy spent 8 years on the bicycle, Scott. And what I loved about the book was like every chapter starts out with a question that somebody asked him while he was on the road. Like, what are you scared of? Have you been robbed? How much does your trip cost? But to circle back, I think he said at his time, he calculated like he was going to live off of like, and this was in 2002. He's going to live off of like $22 a day. And then he's like, add 10% for whatever miscalculation. So I think he ended up living off of $24 a day was his budget. And mine is like, I just threw out a random number of $33 a day, which is pretty cheap.
Really cheap. Yeah, I could get into that. Especially in Latin America. Until you get to Costa Rica, and then prices are going to go up.
It's going to go up, but I know some people, and like that warm showers thing, there's probably going to be warm showers hosts.
Yeah, exactly.
I also have like 3 or 4 friends meeting me in Costa Rica. So if we have to get hostel rooms, we'll just get private rooms and split the cost that way. And also, like I have the stove. If I was doing the Baja Divide, just the Baja Divide, I wouldn't bring a stove. I've used it like twice because water's so scarce out here. You don't want to carry the extra weight, and obviously, if you're cooking, it's going to require water. Being able to cook your own meals. Like the first tent I bought was an $900 Helibird tent, and people were like, "Dude, that's so expensive." I slept in it for 4 months. And the first 4 months of this trip, I paid less than $100 for lodging total. Like that includes campsites. So like shout out to my warm showers host, Edwin. Shout out to my friend Kelly in Anchorage. Shout out to Marone. Shout out to my woofing host that I stayed with for 2 weeks. And then I sold that tent online, and I bought like a big Agnes for like $350 or something like that. So like you start to whittle those costs down, and it becomes much more manageable. And it's like, I spent a lot of my money on food. if I want to get good food, and when I'm in the city, obviously it costs more, and you want to go out to restaurants and kind of see the culture a little bit. Like most of where I went over budget was like, I was in Seward, Alaska, and I spent, I think, $260 on a boat tour to go see the glaciers and the whales and the sea lions and all this cool shit. That was totally worth $260. Because there's been some unexpected expenses. That's totally fine.
Did you just save up money and to be able to like I guess, do you have like X number of dollars and that's supposed to last you the whole trip? And you're trying to like budget for that, or is your intention to like pick up work along the way?
Oh, good question. I tried to save money, but like I didn't. I essentially paid for this trip by the sale of my home.
uh,
And then I took a lot of that money and I invested it into the stock market, which is like, eh, we'll see. You know, it's
yeah.
really funny. Like I had more money than I ever had in my entire life, and this was kind of a moment of affirmation where there was nothing I wanted to buy, and the only thing I wanted to do was begin this trip. So for me, that was like a good signal that I was doing exactly what I wanted to do in life. But it's one of those things where like the money, I don't know what's going to happen with the stock market. But like I mentioned, that Christopher McCandless into the wild thing, like at some point in time, I think I'm just going to give the money away and like and lean into like the extreme part of like really traveling. You know, I
Wow.
feel grateful to have what I have, but I still have so much, relatively speaking, especially
Yeah.
in these countries that I'm going to. And I feel very privileged. And I think to get 100% like the real raw experience, I have to let that money go. Um,
To get to the next level.
I don't, if there's another level to this, and like I
Yeah.
see it, and the universe has been telling me about it. And I told my friend Kirk, like, if I don't let it go, I think it's just going to go away on its own. Like something's going to happen, and I'm going to be okay with it because like I can already tell it's going to happen. And people are like, it's so funny. I love people. I love everybody that's following along. I wouldn't share this story with anybody if like these stories if people didn't live vicariously through it, and if it wasn't encouraging people to live a different lifestyle and to let them know that there are options besides what we normally see in society.
Yeah.
But uh what was I gonna say? Oh, people are like, you're so brave, you're so courageous, and like maybe I don't feel like it. Like when you follow your heart, it feels incredible. You don't feel like you're being brave or courageous. You feel like, why didn't I do this years ago?
Yeah.
What
Well,
made
yeah.
me think that I couldn't do this? Um, and I always tell people like, look at my bike. I have like the best technology. I have the best gear. Look at these people. There's people that did what I and like this world seems really big to me because it's my world. So like I know all like about probably more about people traveling around the world than the average person, obviously. But there's people that did this, and like Devla Murphy, who traveled, I think it was in like the 50s from Ireland all the way through Pakistan and carried a gun with her. And there's people that did this on penny Farlingtons with tube tires and like 23-inch C tires. There's people that did this with so much less than what I have. And so like I thought maybe when I got to Mexico I'd feel like a little bit more adventurous because I don't speak the language. I this is going to sound weird, but I don't really feel like I'm on an adventure
Hmm.
just yet. It's just like a life. Like I've chosen this lifestyle, and the next level is making it an adventure. And I listened to shout out to Mackenzie Barney,
Yeah.
that podcast. So yeah, that was really cool. I got a lot of tips from her. And she said something that really kind of struck me. And I try and find like the happy medium of like doing too much research and not enough research.
Yeah.
But there's just like something in my deep soul and my heart that is like get crazy with it.
Yeah. Yeah. That speaks to me for sure. Like I want the crazy, I want the wild, I want the real adventure, and it's hard to find.
Hmm.
This may go against like your whole living in the moment and not setting expectations, but I'm curious if there's any part of the journey that you're especially looking forward to, or do you just like not even think about it and just try to really stay in the moment?
Africa.
You
I've always
mentioned
wanted
that.
to go to Africa. Yeah, always. I don't know why. So I'm super stoked.
It's calling to you.
Yeah, yeah, Africa is going to be, I think, incredible.
I bet you're going to find some real adventures along the way. You might even find them in Mexico. Well, you're already
I
in
know.
Mexico, but
Yeah.
further
I'm
into
like, I'm
Mexico.
like, dude, just be patient. Like I was having these thoughts the other day, and then like literally the following day is when my phone broke and my camera broke, and I was like, here we go. Asking you shall receive. Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
you're going to find adventure, I think, along your way. You got 10 years, so I have a feeling you're going to find exactly what you're looking for along the way. And especially if that's what your intention is. I mean, you put yourself here, like your intentions and your goals and who you are as a person put you on this path that you're on now. And I have a feeling that wherever you continue to point your intentions, you're going to keep finding yourself in the right place.
Yeah. Yeah. The universe will provide much adventure and beautiful humans and beautiful experiences.
Yeah.
And it already has. So yeah, one day at a time.
Well, man, it's super good to chat with you on your adventure. I've been following and living vicariously through you, and you are doing the exact same thing that one day I hope to get to do. I don't know if I'll do it for 10 years. The way I look at it is like I don't want to set like I just want an undetermined amount of time. I'm like 10 years out before I'm done raising kids, so like it's a little too far out to like start making hard plans, but the idea of just having the freedom to wake up every morning and pedal 10 miles or pedal 100 miles or stop in this town or go surfing or whatever it is like something that my heart and my soul really yearns for. And so it's been especially neat to get to live vicariously through you and just watch you fulfilling your own dreams. So I appreciate you coming on the podcast, and I'm happy to see you doing so well, man. It really I've gotten goosebumps and almost brought to tears like several times just listening to you talk about your adventures, and yeah, I'm really happy for you, Indy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's beautiful to share the journey, and thank you for having me. Life is a beautiful thing, and I have no doubt in my mind that I'll probably see you on the road.
I hope so. Yeah, I was gonna say maybe one of these days I can get out and join you for an extended period on your trip and come and give you some company, even though you're not lonely. You can give me some company.
Yeah, no, no, I totally have been leaning into that like fun, curious river otter side as well. So I enjoy the company.
Yeah. Yeah, I really relate to that too. I'm a hardcore introvert and extrovert. I can, depending I go both ways, but I really related to that. And I'd love to have you back on the podcast sometime. I mean, over the course of your journeys, it'd be fun to just check in with you from time to time and see how things are going, and just keep in touch with you. And you have a lot of fans, a lot of people that care about you all over the world. So I'm sure they'd love to hear from you too.
Yeah, I'm not going to disappear just yet.
Well, before you disappear, you're actually doing a pretty good job, like putting stuff out on like social media. I know you were doing YouTube, but it sounds like your computer broke, and that's probably a little bit harder now. But and you got track leaders, so yeah, for people who'd want to follow your journey, what's the best way to keep in touch with you for right now?
Yeah, the track leaders is super fun. And then any of the videos I did a pretty cool video on the Dalton Highway. Um, and then I've got GoPro and drone footage of more of Alaska if the computer ever gets fixed and it's salvageable. But like I just willed it down to Instagram. After the election, I had to get rid of like all of my Facebook essentially. And I just have that. I have a page, but I have no friends on Facebook. So it's just for travel pages essentially. Yeah, cycling kindness is the Instagram handle, and I have had a ton of people reach out, um, like for example, Mattia from San Juanico, that are like, "Hey, I'm in this part of the world," or "I'd like to join you," or they have questions about touring in general, and I always love to answer those questions and kind of we're all just helping each other out. So anyway, I can help people out and Yeah, the Instagram is just posting silly videos, but there's links on there to go to the track leaders page. Shout out to Lindsay Shepard and Scott Morris for putting that up for me. That was really sweet of them.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to you checking out Oaxaca in particular. It's a place that I love. And you mentioned Guatemala. I'm actually headed to Guatemala on Sunday for a week. So I'll let you know how it is.
Wow. Where are you going?
So my girlfriend and I, we trade off. We'll do a bike trip and a surfing trip because her first love is surfing. So this trip, we're just going to Antigua, which is very touristy, and we're doing hiking a volcano and just kind of doing some touristy stuff in Antigua, and then headed down to the coast. We're going to El Paredon and surfing and yoga and beach life for 4 or 5 days.
El Paredon. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm writing it down because I like the beach life.
Yeah.
I'm
more of a mountain
really
guy,
cool
but
well.
I like it all. I like it all. I like it all. I don't really like to pick. I find that it's more about like being in the moment, but I just love adventure. I love exploring new places. I like to see new cultures and eat new food, and I want to see the mountains and the beaches and everything in between. And it's a beautiful world, and I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Yeah. That Corey, that woman I was traveling with, she said, what keeps you like inspired or motivated to like get up every day and do it? The answer is very simple. It's just every day is different.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get. But like you said, I enjoy it all. The rain, the sunshine, the waves, the mountains, and when you're the nomadic lifestyle, it's so rich and diverse every single day. So it's really beautiful. I can't imagine like after I'd gone back home for the 3 months. I just don't think I'll ever go back to that lifestyle. Whatever's next, I might have
wait.
like two or three different houses where I have bike travelers show up depending on the seasons. That would be the like dream. So let's go stock market.
Let's go. Don't check right now, by the way. But hopefully it's stock markets always go up and down.
Or I just figure it out how to do it without money. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy for you, my friend. It was an absolute pleasure to get to see your beautiful face again and touch base with you. And I don't know. I'm really enjoying following your journey, and it was fun to hear from you again. So happy trails, my friend. I look forward to following you for as long as you have Instagram. And then I guess I'm just going to have to call you if you have a phone.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your birthday with me. Happy birthday. You look super healthy. You look super happy. And I'm very, very proud of you as always. And it's really funny because I got the notification on my Yahoo that today I have to resubscribe for my Patreon for Bikes or Death.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for being a patron.
Yeah. So happy birthday.
Well, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure to spend part of it with you.
Yeah.
And happy trails. Happy trails.
All
Have
right.
fun out there, man. Living your best life, doing the damn thing.
All right. Yeah, that's right. Ride your bike. Many blessings.
Ride your damn bike. All right. Love you, buddy. Bye-bye.